Hello and welcome to Shay Zasaa and Zasaa Zooms In. And I've got Lanre with me again. Now, you may remember that the last time I had Lanre here, we didn't even arrive before the thing was over. He has so much wisdom to give. But anyway, we're going to try. Wherever we get to is where we stop. There's nothing I can do about that. So, today's topic. Oh, sorry, Lanre. Thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me again.
Today's topic is, I've titled it, What's in It for Me?
Okay.
And really it's about expectations. Now, I've said it so many times that I feel I did, at the beginning of Shazaz, I did a show on expectations, but it was like I've been wanting to go back. And I've really realized that I need to go back. And expectation is so huge, as in that there's so many. So this What's in It for Me is more relationship. So let's talk about expectations in relationships.
Yep.
Now, the reason I had that first conversation about expectations is because I had a friend who was having something to do with a married man. And her stance was, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And she was like, yeah, but it does. Because she had expectations of him that he had, whether implied or vocalized, had given her the right to, it's like, what allows you to have expectations? Different levels of relationship. So I know that with certain friends of mine, they expect certain things just by virtue of the level of relationship. There are things I expect from my husband because he's my husband. There are things but in this particular situation, and I had no leg to stand on by the time she finished, because she basically was saying to me, he's basically given me all these expectations and therefore they are mine and I expect him to meet them. So I'm turning around and saying, but he's not going to leave his wife. And she's like, that's irrelevant. This is what is happening. And therefore I have the right to these expectations. I mean, she didn't say it like that, but that was what she was saying. And it really made me think about expectations and not right, maybe right is the wrong word, but what right we have to certain expectations and specifically within relationships. And should we do like marriage, like romantic relationships, or should we just do relationships?
Well, we can do romantic, but I guess whatever we talk about would apply to relationships in general, and I guess where it does apply, we can make those references. But I think because of the exclusivity aspect of the romantic relationships, we might as well.
Okay, so can you define expectations? What would you say an expectation is?
Well, I don't know about define expectations. If I had known, I would have checked the dictionary.
I can Google for you. Do you want me to Google?
Feel very free to Google it.
But if I said to you, what is an expectation? I mean, you must have something of what expectation
is. My relationship with expectations isn't so much about what they are as much as an understanding that they are mine. So for me, the emphasis is more on my than expectations, because as human beings, we have this habit to project.
Yeah.
So we project our perspective. So I've been married going on 20 years. Okay.
Expectations, a strong belief that something will happen or be the case.
Yeah. Exactly. That something will happen. So a strong belief that something will happen or be the case on the basis of expectations are usually shaped by experiences. But you see, my experiences and your experiences, if at all similar, are not identical. Right? So if our expectations are shaped by our experiences, so someone who grows up in a home where affection is gushing like a waterfall, has an expectation to receive.
Yeah, to receive that. Yeah.
Somebody for whom expectation was like this tightly guarded thing, it comes with a different expectation. Put those two people together, and they already come in with different expectations. So
100%,
an expectation, even by that definition, is dependent often on the experiences that you have. But the core thing is that in both cases, the expectation is the individual's.
So there's an onus on the individual to let the other person know what.
Well, there's an onus on the individual to recognize and accept that the expectation is their own.
Okay, yes.
First and foremost, before you even, because at the end of the day, the fact that I communicate an expectation to you doesn't now mean it is no longer still my expectation.
Yeah. And does it mean that you have to obey?
And that's why I say the foundational thing is the acceptance that it's
mine. Yes.
And I'm dealing with an individual who has hers. And then the question about what's right, the question is, what right do I have to say that my expectations are superior to hers?
Yeah.
Because her expectations were shaped and formed by the road she's walked, and mine have been. So do we have sufficient data to conclude that mine are worth more than hers?
Yeah, yeah.
Beyond the fact that they are mine. So I think the starting point whenever I deal with expectations is always that that acceptance that they're mine. I am responsible for them. Nobody else is duty bound to co-sign on those expectations. Obviously, when they are communicated, it is much easier to.
Yeah.
But the starting point is that to establish this expectation is mine. So I go into marriage with a hope and expectation that my wife would be. My wife's ability to be. So I'll give you a perfect example. I married a woman who I'd never seen, for reasons that there isn't enough time to go into, I'd never seen her mother in the capacity of wife.
Yeah.
Even though her mother was married to her father, but I think she came from a polygamous background, so had never seen her mother in the office of, her only engagement with her mother had been as mother, somebody who independently made choices, who didn't consult before reaching conclusions. So is it a reasonable expectation to marry that person
And expect them to
that
be.
she has a concept of that?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But is it an expectation that my wife and I would be able to partner together to do stuff? Yes. But now, how do you marry those two things?
Yeah.
Do I now say, I'm sorry, well, if you wanted to be like your mom, you shouldn't have gotten married? You know?
Yeah.
No, so, because again, the choice to marry her was mine, nobody else's. So that's a reality. And my expectations compared to, and then she also, that her background also brings along with it a set of expectations about what a man is also supposed to be. So there's already that tension. But that's why I say what helped us get through that was that baseline understanding that the expectation is mine. So at which point, even before we got married, we're able to say to each other, I think it would be unfair if you were expected to have wifehood figured out.
Yeah.
Or even have a baseline understanding of it as that. So we just had an agreement that scrapped that.
But do you not think that, do you not think that you are just a forward thinker and a bit more aware and intentional than most people? If you know what I mean. I don't know how many other men would have been in that position and taken that stand, so to speak.
I think experience has suggested to me that I probably am, because
I think you are.
For me, it was logical.
I know. I said to you something at the beginning of this.
But in engaging with other people, I found out that it's not as common as. But for me, it was the most logical. But the baseline of understanding was my expectations. I come from a home grew up with brothers, and even in that engagement, you realize that we have different expectations of each other. We have different expectations of our parents. We have different expectations of ourselves. But yeah, we were all nursed at the same teeth. We all grew up under the same. But yeah, so it's that baseline understanding, the expectations.
But you see, please, can I say something to that? I always say that I feel that every child, every sibling has different parents.
I completely agree.
You know what I mean? And that's why you have different expectations.
I completely agree. However, you can bring a set of twins in and they will still have different expectations because their genetic makeup impacts that.
Yes, obviously, yes.
No, I completely agree. But, if you throw twins in the mix, you also find out that, if they have different personalities, different temperaments, then the one who has a greater propensity for patience will have a different propensity from the expectation from the one who doesn't. But ultimately, and even that furthers the case that your expectations are yours. Then you now level up, having accepted, and accepting the expectations also, as I said, you have no right to co-opt. You can only sign up to my expectation by your
choice. Yeah.
However, one of the problems in relationships is that expectation isn't even communicated.
I was just going to say, I think communication is a major thing.
It's a major thing. Yeah. But the reason why I've spent that much time on that bit is because if somebody thinks communication is sufficient, they're going to think that if I tell you, because you said you love me, then I have a reasonable expectation that I should get that thing. Yeah. Absolutely not. Which is why even a lot of these conversations are more profitable before marriage.
Yeah.
So that then you can actually see,
this is not going to work.
There are too many areas as opposed to just, because after you've crossed over, it's kind of harder.
Yeah.
But after you've made those commitments on the back of, whether you want to call it acceptable or unacceptable ignorance, after you've made those it's harder. So that's why, you have these conversations. I think, you hear it said that, is love really enough in relationships? The answer is no. And when we say,
Take it from us. 20 years married, 27 years married. Love is not
it's
enough.
not enough in the sense that the feelings of love, because I always say that, there's that romantic haze in the honeymoon period that it doesn't even send you advance notice that it's going one day. You just wake up and it's just
gone.
not there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, okay, what just happened? Why is it harder to do all the stuff that I've been doing? And so that expectation has to be communicated, but with an understanding. So, and the beauty of that is that it actually then means more. If I have accepted that this expectation is mine, and this person is under no obligation to fulfill that expectation, it actually means more when the person chooses to meet it, as opposed to having an sense of entitlement, wherein because I have an expectation, and because I heard you say you love me, therefore you are duty bound. Because I think in the earlier show when I was here the other time, we talked about disappointment.
Yeah.
And disappointment is essentially the gap between expectation and your reality. The bigger the gap, the bigger the disappointment.
Yeah.
But again, if you have an understanding that, okay, and I always say to people, in terms of whether you're able to, expectation, reality, you have limited control over that, but you have greater control over this.
Yes.
So that's the scale that can slide.
Yes.
And if the gap between this disappointment, the more you can get your expectations to marry reality, the less disappointment you actually have to grapple with.
Yeah.
But when you want to keep your expectations all the way here, you're essentially saying, I'm putting all the pressure on the other person.
But you see,
to bridge the gap. To bridge the gap.
Does this not now come back to what we were talking about on the other thing about selflessness and how much you give up of yourself? As in how much you are prepared to put the other person. Because I feel like this whole thing of expectations is back down to, this is what I want. It's all about me. It's a me thing. So like the more you can get rid of the me, which is that.
But it is. Anybody who's had a child knows that nobody coaches your child to be selfish and self-centered. There's no coaching. It's kind of like, in fact, you spend the first years trying to uncoach it. It's like, who brought this in? And so we do come with that sense. But I think it's Job that says, naked I came into the world, naked. We use that to talk about possessions. Yeah. But it's beyond possessions. Expectations are one of the things I came in. So, it's one of the things I acquired and I put. So the reality is that having an expectation that somebody would make my life, that somebody else would take a brush to paint the picture of my life, desired life. That's and it happens in friendships, at work, in romantic relationships. Even I'm a big advocate of an understanding that it gets to a point where, as one of your responsibilities as an adult, is to help educate your parents on the value systems that define your adulthood. Yeah, that you have, Yeah, because you tend to find a lot of tensions whereby my parents still want me to be, and I always say, have you actually drawn up the boundaries? Yes. And expressed and communicated those boundaries? No, I have an expectation that they should know I'm 25. No, you are 25, but when they look at you, they still remember that little baby that they held in their hands. But you are the one you have a responsibility to help them navigate that transition. So expectations. So once there's that, then the communication, and then so expectations I mean that example you use is quite specific. Of your friend, it's quite a specific one that I don't even know that I want to get. No, let's not use that. Yeah, but that was what made me think about it, because I just thought, wow, she has a point. Yeah, but you see, expectations are, and that's so. I guess the only thing I wanted to take out of that is implicit versus explicit, because again, projection. Yeah, I'll tell you as a guy that, I always say that I couldn't not be a Christian in this world, because in the world that I was not a Christian in, a guy still had to do a ton of work. In this world, it's like, so I'm happy I'm not a Christian now, because it is very, very easy as a guy, because I think. In terms of relationship, I could be wrong. You're a woman, correct me? I think there's a lot more internalizing about relationships on that side of the.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, we were married before.
Yeah.
You've even
You met him,
before
exactly.
we met you, because we know that that's him. He's my husband.
Exactly.
So yes, I think there is, and we're generalizing.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
But there's there is
Yes.
an element of that. Yes.
And for a guy, that can be a wave that I can happily ride.
Yeah.
Because if you can just conclude things without me having to say them,
Absolutely.
it not only makes it easier for me to get what I want, but it also protects me. And the day you turn and try to say it, and I can turn around to see if you can show me that I ever said it,
Yeah.
then I'll buy it.
Yeah.
And so for guys, it's actually a very safe space. So that implicit expectation, I'm not very, very comfortable with implicit.
No, it's funny because I
expectations,
remember there was once that Pastor Agu was talking about this from the pulpit, and he was saying, you know that you're calling her at 2 a.m. and then you were wondering why she thinks that there's something.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that you know what I mean? So that's exactly what you're saying, that there's certain actions that you do that you're not saying anything, but your actions are speaking very loud, and you know that she's hearing everything they're saying.
Yes.
And I think that was the situation with my friend.
Yes.
Where I don't think the guy, because I knew the guy, and I don't think for a second that he had any, you know what I mean? But she was convinced.
Yeah.
And her argument was, I said, okay.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as when she said it to him, he shrugged the shoulders.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't outrightly say no, but he would turn around to you and say, I didn't outrightly say yes either.
Yeah.
So that's the danger. So I think expectations, especially where possible, should be explicit. I think so. But again, not with the expectation that by expressing it, then the other person is duty bound to honor it. Because a relationship is a gamble of sorts. It's a leap of faith. You go in with the hope that this person that I'm meeting today at this age, first I don't know who I am going to be in 10 years,
exactly.
50 years, 20 years. So I'm hoping that person will still look at the me I am going to become and still think the same of me. And I'm hoping that I'm still going to think the same of them. So there's a risk element to it. So, but when you can do that with that platform where expectations can be exchanged, so all of a sudden, it's quite interesting. One of the conversations that my wife and I had the most was family, as in the kind of family we want to raise, how we want to raise our family. So all of a sudden, you already have a shared platform that's beyond the I love you, you love me, I love you, you love me. So we're working towards an outcome together. Expectations about how we interact with each other, how we interact with the world. And those are things that as we evolve as people, as we grow, expectations shift. So what I told you 15 years ago may not be valid. So for me to say, because I told you this 15, it's like when guys say, but I love you, I've already told you once. It's like, okay, so if you were able to tell her once, you can tell her twice. So tell her again. So expectations shift, they change, and there's still a responsibility at those points. So going back to the example of my wife, yes, at the beginning there was that, okay, you have no reference point for this, but there was okay, you've been married for a number of years now.
Now you know.
Now, just like, is it a reasonable time to now start to shift or review or refine those expectations? Because quite frankly, the parameters have changed.
Yeah.
So, but they have to be explicit. But again, it's doing so. Again, I think in the last conversation when I was here, it was about conditional versus unconditional. Again, it's are these expectations conditional or unconditional? So when I'm saying, okay, now the parameters have changed, am I then saying
if you don't,
again, because when I went into the marriage, I knew. So on what was I banking the?
Yeah.
Okay, so if she doesn't, then because I went in wide-eyed.
Yeah.
So it was. What I had more evidence of was the reality I knew.
Yeah.
So can I then 10, 15 years down the line now turn around and say, yeah, despite the fact that I knew the reality, because I'm not happy with my current reality, no. Where do I introduce the condition? So that's why I with expectations, I'm always big on they're yours.
Yeah.
Own them. Take responsibility for them, because if they are wrong, the responsibility to shift them is yours.
Yes.
It's not somebody else's.
Yeah.
And my expectation of you may be perfectly reasonable. That doesn't supersede your choice to be perfectly unreasonable. It actually doesn't.
Yeah.
So if my expectation is realistic, I'm allowing for a possibility that Zasaa might be unreasonable. So how do I respond to that? So just having an expectation is not a guarantee of the outcome that you desire. An expectation is just something, back to your definition, it's just something that you believe. I believe that my husband will always be nice to me. All the best with that belief, and it's nice. You know,
But I
nice
feel like,
belief,
so
yeah.
do you think that, because I feel like everybody, like you said, everybody has expectations. And yes, you rightly said they're yours. But I almost feel like, should we not have expectations then?
We ought to, but you remember what I said about disappointment being the gap
Yeah,
between.
yeah.
So the question is, the information that you're collecting, the data you're collecting from the world, are you using that to shape your expectations?
Yeah.
So if I have 3 friends, one has a hotter temper than the other. Is it wise for me to have equal expectations of both of them? Do you know,
Yeah, but you see, I always say that thing. You have to know who you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Know your friend, get to know.
Exactly. So your expectations should, now that doesn't mean you don't hope that Mr. Hot Temper will outgrow that habit. But again, a lot of times, even like members of the family where this person, and then the question I always ask is, and when people have this concern, was their behavior inconsistent with your experience of them? No. Then I'm going to say, I don't understand. Then I actually don't understand what the problem is.
You are the one being unrealistic.
I really don't understand the problem. Their
Because,
behavior
yes.
is consistent
Yeah.
with what you have known. Yeah, but I was hoping, no, I'm not knocking hope, but their behavior is consistent
Yeah.
with your experience of them. Yes, then you didn't manage your expectations. And if we even go back to that other conversation about love and creating boundaries and stuff, that's how you manage your expectations. Because if I know that Tinuka is a tattletale,
You will know not what you are going to tell me.
exactly.
And what you're not going to
It
tell
doesn't
me.
mean that we won't go out and have fun and have, but
Yeah.
in the boundaries I've set with her,
I'm not saying
I'm
more
not
than
saying
this.
more than
Yeah,
this.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
can't then turn around tomorrow and go, can you imagine that, I told Tinuka, and the people say, yeah, but the same Tinuka from whatever.
But you
know?
see, it's so funny that you say that, because I feel like one of the problems with humans, I don't know, let me just talk about it, is that we pretend. I don't know, do we pretend? We don't accept the people for who they are. I think it's Maya Angelou that says, they show you the first time who they are, whatever.
When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them.
Yes, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And they're showing you constantly, but because of whatever it is, we're hoping, we're expecting, and I think that is so unfair to put that on them,
somebody else,
because that's not who they are. They've never pretended to be that person, but we have now decided that we feel this is who they should be or who they can be, and then we put that expectation, and then they feel that we get angry with them.
Yeah, I think the reason we project a lot. So I was saying to a couple that my wife and I mentor, that giving them an instance where my wife and I gave her some information, and it was information that I thought that when somebody gets this kind of information, they
will act on it.
immediately. And 2.5 or 2 hours later, I call my wife, how far, you have, and she's like, oh, sorry, I'm still where I was, but and I was saying to them that for me, it is perfectly reasonable to know that when you get that kind of information, I've been married to my wife for almost 20 years. For her, so the projection of what is reasonable is always based on my perspective.
Well, you see what happened yesterday now.
Yeah.
Wale had his backlights fixed.
Yeah.
And so he'd left the car and he'd gone to work. So
Yeah.
he called me to say, please, can you go and collect the car keys at some point so that I can pick up the car after hours? So I was like, fine. So he had called me in the day to say, can you believe it? It cost 75 quid. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. He was like, it's more than he expected and everything. So I was like, no, but for what they did, I think, so we had a conversation about the price and everything. So I went, I didn't think that meant please go and pay for the thing. So I get there to collect the keys. And the guy says, I don't think he's paid. So I said, what? So he's like, I don't think he's paid. I said, okay. And I paid. So I now called him. I said, you didn't pay? He said, oh, but you are collecting the keys now. So it's literally typical of that, where he's thinking, we've had a discussion about the price. She knows the price. She's collecting the keys. So why is she not going to pay? I was thinking, he's paid. He's just telling me this is how much it costs.
Whereas if the
27 years later.
If the tables were turned, part of his process may have been to ask you, have you paid, or would you have me pay for it? Because the way his mind processes information, that's it. But what happens is that we project, and then we have expectations of other people shaped on the worldview that we have. But is that question about what shape is a piece of cheese? And the answer is, it depends on what side you're standing
looking
on.
from.
If you're looking, it looks like a rectangle. On another side is a square, on another is a triangle. But you actually have to get the 3-dimensional piece. So a lot of us relationships with expectations are very 2-dimensional. It's not 3-dimensional because it doesn't actually factor in reality. Yeah. The reality is this: Are people going to hurt you? Absolutely. Is it going to come from some of the most surprising spaces? Absolutely. Are you going to have to deal with disappointment? Absolutely. The question is, how do you pivot? How do you adjust in that reality? How do you learn quickly that life is filled with disappointments, and some of the disappointments are actually shaped by our relationship with our expectations, whereby, you know, as I said, he looked like everything I thought a man would be. I hear things like, I'm like, sorry, how do you measure? How do you collect data for that, that kind of thing?
From the movies.
Yeah, but he had a job when you met him. Does the data show you how he's going to be when he doesn't have a job? You know, his parents were alive and well. Does the data show you how he's going to be when age takes them? You know,
Yeah.
It's such a weird point of view. But again, we project with hope that this is, and then we now pin it, and that's the unfairness you're saying about without pinning other people to act on this script that we have not even bothered to share with them, and when they fail to deliver on it, we act out, throw our toys out of the pram because they have failed us.
It's funny because one of my
Oh, I thought you were aware of the time.
I wasn't aware of the time. Oh my goodness. One of my big sisters had said to me that, you know, in any relationship, that you need to see the person hurt. You need to see them ill. You need to see them angry. You need to see them before you marry them. That's what she was saying, which is not really feasible. But I get her point.
The angry, I always advocate.
Okay, but how do you...
Watch the way they treat people. So if they get lousy service
in the restaurant. Oh yeah, how do they treat... Yeah. No, things like that you can... But it's not all of the emotions that you can really...
It's just being realistic.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we have 12 seconds left. This is Lanre. Anyway, expectations in relationships. What are your expectations? Do you have any? Let us know and follow us on YouTube.